It is the morning after. It is another edition of the Bark Tank presented by Sugardale. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm back at the home office here. My name is Andrew Siciliano. My good friend and sideline companion Jerod Cherry will join us coming up shortly after a Browns loss. They fall in Pittsburgh 27-14. I'm going with the sideline edition Kevin Stefanski cap today, although I thought of, not that anyone cares. If you're watching here, and we thank you for watching on the Browns YouTube page, like, subscribe, pass it along to your friends, or the audio version as well. I thought of wearing the old school, like I wore this hat last week. This is a Reebok hat. It is so old and disgusting on the inside. I thought of wearing that one, but I'm wearing this one. Browns lose. They fall to the Steelers 27-14. They fall to 3-10, and with that loss, they are officially eliminated from postseason contention. It was bad math to begin with coming into Pittsburgh. It is now official. The Browns will not be going to the playoffs in consecutive seasons. I really thought it was going to happen. I know. I feel like I start every show on a Monday when we record this on Monday. I feel like I say it every week. I felt like it was going to happen. I had been warned it's different in Pittsburgh. I said, I don't care. I had never been to a Browns-Steelers game at Heinz, Acrisure, whatever the heck you want to call it, Three Rivers, whatever. I know Three Rivers, different building. I'd never been there for a Browns-Steelers game. For all the years I'd always come in for Thursday night football, that game was in Cleveland. We never, in my years on the road, had a TNF game. The years that I was on the road in Pittsburgh. Never been sent there on Sunday. I was always a studio guy on Sunday. And if I did have, let's say the Browns were there in primetime on the road, one of those free moments, I'm not flying to Pittsburgh. First of all, you can't fly to Pittsburgh direct. You can't fly to Pittsburgh from anywhere. Why am I going to Pittsburgh in my free time? Anyway, you get my point. I had never been there. And so I didn't care about the streak. 20 consecutive games? They had won there after the 20 season in the playoffs. That one win cancels out all the other losses, in my opinion. Regardless, they went in there. They didn't win. Now, watching back the game on Monday morning, I get through the first quarter. I'm like, well, all right, they're the better team. They're going to win. Clearly, that did not happen. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. You can't have a taunting on a fair catch. You can't have a muff punt. You can't have silly penalties like the Jermaine Ifedi one. Granted, he's trying to defend his quarterback, and I thought they should have blown the whistle much earlier. Jameis was stood up. That play's dead. Forward progress stop, blow the whistle. Browns also did get the advantage of some calls as well. You got Joey Porter Jr. called for unsportsmanlike when he was the second guy in. Browns got away with one there. They got the Alex Highsmith roughing the passer. Clearly two steps, but you don't often see that called because it wasn't a horrible hit. Jameis, good job selling it, throwing his arms up into the air. Great job there. So you did get some things go your way, but you missed two kicks, and you have those penalties, and you have the two picks on your own side. And it all kind of sort of falls apart. On Monday, Kevin Stefanski said that Jameis Winston is still going to be the starting quarterback. I do think that is the right call. I do think you could actually beat the Chiefs. You've seen the Chiefs play this year. They find a way to win every week. To their credit, that means they're a very, 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 very good team. 9 consecutive division titles. They are likely, with the Bills' loss to the Rams on Sunday, heading to the number 1 overall seed in the American Football Conference and home field advantage. Right? But do you feel like you could beat him with Jameis? I mean, if we get the Jameis from New Orleans, if we get the Jameis from the Steelers game of the snow, if you get the Jameis in Denver for 500, I know there were picks that night as well. Sure, let's go. And I feel that way every week, even with 3-10. Am I delusional? I don't think so. Am I overly optimistic? Certainly. But you can't watch the first quarter of that game. I know, 4 quarters. 4 quarters you need to play 4. You can't watch the first quarter of that game and not say, yeah, why not? Why not? And that's how I feel every week. Greg Newsome, likely not going to play this week. He's going to miss time, according to Kevin Stefanski. He left the game with a hamstring injury. Stefanski did say Monday morning it is the same hamstring that Newsome needed surgery on earlier this year, which is not a good sign. 4 weeks to go, hammy. I don't know. Don't know if we're going to see him again. JOK, and that's speculation, no inside information. Hamstrings, 4 weeks to go. That's rough. JOK is not going to play this week. He is not going to be activated. No other update beyond that. Hoping and praying we do get him back, if not now, but hopefully, some kind of good news and football clearance, because JOK is a difference maker. Also, a great human, locker room better, football team better with JOK on the field. Interesting, because if you're watching Hard Knocks last week, you saw Mike Hall in the defensive line room. Interesting that Stefanski kind of left the door open on Monday to maybe getting Mike Hall back on the field. Maybe. Door is open, just a sliver, implied that there is a decision to be made, and maybe I'm reading too much positive into it, on Mike Hall. Would love to see that, because down the stretch, A, he could be a difference maker, but B, you want to see these young guys on the field. Jawan Briggs made a play or two the last couple of weeks. You're getting him at least some reps there. 7th round pick out of Cincinnati. Jamari Thrash caught a couple of balls, but then was down last week or yesterday, down with the shoulder injury. Would love to see him get some more run. Zach Zinner had his time on the field earlier in the year. He's still dressing. Right now, he is not playing, but we saw Zach Zinner play earlier in the year. The more the young guys can get in there, the better. There is a world that does exist where you can play to win and work in younger players. That world does exist. Hopefully the Browns can find that world moving forward. For those who say, let's play DTR. Well, two things. Number one, I do want to see DTR. I'm a fan. Number two, Jameis, you can't argue, gives you the better chance to win, and it's the Chiefs. Come on, let's go. You're going to put your best foot forward. It's the Chiefs. Let's go. But I hear that you want to see DTR. Maybe. I do as well. I'm a fan on many levels. I don't know that. I know that it's not going to be this week, and I get and I understand why it isn't going to be this week. Certainly. Myles Garrett, hats off to him, who did have the one sack. He had a fumble recovery as well. And hats off to Isaiah McGuire for forcing that fumble in the fourth quarter. Felt like a little bit of a momentum shift there. Unfortunately, though, the Browns then couldn't get anything out of that drive. Jack Conklin also played a good game. Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris in the middle of that line played a good game as well. I know Grant Delpit was beaten on that touchdown by Freiermuth, but you saw Grant Delpit and Denzel Ward in run support as well. As always, tip of the cap to them. On the offensive side, thought Jerome Ford showed some burst. Thought Jerome Ford looked good in the return game, certainly with that 56-yard kickoff there to open up the second half. Jerry Jeudy, would love to see him get more targets in the first half. He did have that 35-yard touchdown. Jameis creating on the move and again going to his left and squaring his shoulders. Kind of like a shortstop trying to turn or make that turn, or even a second baseman make that turn going the other way, getting back open and throwing that ball to second base. Jameis throwing that ball to Jerry Jeudy. Nice play. Had a moment there in the pregame. Don't know if you heard it on the Cleveland Browns radio network there. When Jim Nantz was on with Ken Carman, or maybe Andy Baskin, I don't remember which part of the show it was. I apologize. But Jim Nantz suggested that during their production meeting, that Tony Romo and Jameis kind of had a moment there because Romo had said, hey, listen, early in my career, I was known for fourth quarter interceptions, and I eventually got out of that, and they had a good moment, and maybe Jameis can take that moving forward. Obviously, the interception happened in the fourth quarter where I don't know that Elijah Moore necessarily thought the ball was coming to him, got his head around a little bit late, threw his hands up. There was a window. It was a very tight window. We'll talk about that with Jerod coming up in a little bit here as well. Unfortunately, though, that pick, a backbreaker. But at that point, you need a score. You need an onside. It was bad math. The Browns were trying to beat the Steelers 3 consecutive times for the first time since the Marty Schottenheimer, Bud Carson era. So the late 80s, my childhood here, when the Browns were winning and beating up on quarterbacks like Bubby Brister and Mark Malone. Alas, they could not do that. But, hey, new Steeler rivalry renewal next week or next year, I beg your pardon. And the way the Steelers had all 6 of their AFC North games stacked in the second half of the season wouldn't stun me. And I have no inside information there. I just felt it leaving the stadium yesterday if we're back there in September next year. Just a thought. Again, don't make a headline out of that. I have no inside information on that one. It's just a thought. And my thought being that they're not going to give the Steelers all of their division games the second half of the year for 2 consecutive years. Don't forget Hard Knocks, episode 2 on Tuesday evening. When they ended episode 1, they teased a lot from the Monday night game in Denver. They weren't able to turn that stuff around Monday night to Tuesday evening, so I think we're going to see, I'm just assuming, a lot from the Browns and Broncos game, and then a lot from this one in Pittsburgh as well. I know that the Hard Knocks cameras were there with the big boom mic. You might have seen it on my Instagram when my friend Sarah Walsh from NFL Network was interviewing Jameis before the game. Kevin Stefanski, I joked with him during our pregame interview, are you mic'd now? And he said no, but obviously he's mic'd a lot of moments and most moments throughout the week. So good Browns content. Can't wait to see what they have from the loss, unfortunately, in Pittsburgh. So I am thrilled that we're finally welcoming Jerod Cherry into the Bark Tank, sideline reporter, obviously, on the Browns radio network. Because, Jerod, I feel like we never have a post-game debrief, right? You got to go to the locker room. I'm very often running to the airport to get back to this home office. And then I feel like, obviously maybe we'll do a radio hit during the week, but I feel like we never have a right after game or morning after skull session. So I'm glad you're doing this, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to do a debriefing with you today, my man, because after yesterday's performance and what took place, I think we all need a debriefing. I think we all need to just have a state of where we're at, because what we saw yesterday was not reflective of what I thought we were going to see. I really, Andrew, thought we could have won that football game and that we should have won that football game. And I know people hear that and say, what are you talking about? Their record is much better than yours. They always beat you in Pittsburgh.
I don't care.
But I didn't feel that way at all, my man.
Record doesn't matter. We talked about that during the week. Record doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does, I guess, but it doesn't. And when you're talking about the record, you're talking about the 21 straight years. Before yesterday, been 20 straight years regular season. And I had made the point repeatedly with both you and with Nathan that I can't stand that stat. Yes, those losses happened, but the most significant game in that stretch was the playoff game, which is a parenthetical reference when you're talking about the record. The playoff game in January of 21, where they did win. So they've proven that they could do it, but alas, they didn't. Let's start with the most recent and work backwards. So Kevin Stefanski said Monday morning or Monday afternoon, as expected, I think, that Jameis Winston is going to continue to be the starter, at least certainly this week against Kansas City. I think there had been some thought, and I was thinking about it on the way home too last night, that now that you're officially eliminated, although no one really went into the Pittsburgh game thinking there was a chance, like, go to DTR. Maybe you go to DTR. He's sticking with Jameis. I think it's the right call. Jerod, what do you think?
Well, I thought they would actually go to DTR. I thought it was going to be a situation.
Like this week?
Yeah, this week with us being eliminated to see what you have, because we already know the salary cap ramifications and implications is that we're going to be tight and that we're going to have to figure out some ways to free up cap space. But at the same time, I know this. Whenever you put yourself in that we're in development mode, that gives guys even more reason to check out and say, you know what? I'm going to start counting practices. We have about, 4 games left? So that means I have 4 Wednesday practices, 4 Thursday practices, and then you start counting down the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. Mm-hmm. And you don't want that to also spring in the locker room, because you may never get that out of the locker room. So on some levels, it's encouraging to hear that we're not going there per se, because if Jameis truly gives us the best chance to win the quarterback position, you certainly want to send that message to the locker room that, hey, we're still trying to win football games.
Look, the schedule's backloaded here. These are all big games when it comes to big games. They're eliminated, but they're big opponents. They're reasonably large stages, regardless of the fact that the Bengals game got flexed from a Thursday to a Sunday. But for those who don't remember, it's the Chiefs,
right?
It's the Bengals. It's the Dolphins, who won again on Sunday, so they are still very much alive as we sit here today. And then you get the Ravens week 18. We don't know what time that game is going to kick. I mean, there's a chance that the Steelers and Ravens, Pittsburgh has a very tough schedule coming up. They may lose a game or two. And then that game, even though the Steelers now have a 2-game lead for the division, not only has the division on the line, but it could very well have AFC playoff seeding on the line. That could be a 4:00 Eastern game. I mean, these are all legit games. And yes, clearly, Jameis gives you the best chance to win. I am intrigued by DTR. I have always been somebody going back to his days playing up the street here from where I sit at UCLA and talking to him pre-draft. I believe in the guy. I would love to see him get a roll the ball out there, full week of prep. Now, he had that in Denver last year, but a full, you're the guy, let's do this. But even, Jerod, with you eliminated and with the injuries piling up, would that be the case if you gave him the ball this week? I think it would.
Yeah, but here's where it gets complicated. You've had now 4 to 5 weeks of Jameis being the quarterback. So what does that mean? You have a rhythm. You have a timing with the rest of your receiving core. Now you're going to ask a guy who hasn't played that much to all of a sudden come into a situation where everyone's been playing the entire season as from the defense standpoint, and then you're going to ask him to get on track and on board with the receivers as well. Now the second and third team receivers, he'll be on fire with them, Andrew. The reason why? Scout team. But when you go beyond that, the starters, it's not going to be the case more than likely because of the fact that you have to develop rapport. And what does Jameis have right now with Judy, Moore, and now Woods? A rapport, in that they have a rhythm, they have a timing, and all that gets thrown off. And then when you think about the offensive line, they're used to what? A guy getting rid of the football. Now you reintroduce who? A guy that's going to scramble around, a guy that's going to be off schedule, and a guy that's going to more than likely cause you to have more holding calls because he's going everywhere side to side. And don't get me wrong, this is not an indictment on my part of DTR. I'm a DTR supporter and fan. I love what he does and the excitement he brings as well. You just wonder if there will be a major step back because everything's about repetition. And what is he lacking right now? Reps.
It's a fair point. You look at, and in full disclosure, I got to about halftime of the TV copy here before I sat down to talk to you. You look at that play to Whiteheart in the first quarter or the second quarter. That's one where he sat down instead of continuing upfield. Jameis ripped that ball. It was tight, but that's where you're like, okay, maybe a little more time there between those two. They're on the same page. It's one, small drop in the bucket. And watching back, you watch the first quarter and you're down there on the field. You're like, all right, got this. Like, keep going with what you have here. And then the death by 1,000 paper cuts, they keep adding up. I want to go to the first half. Did you feel, Jerod, from on the sideline, that Jameis was at least not scarred, but he had the sideline pick of the 2-minute warning intended for Elijah Moore from Monday night stuck in his head? When he was going to the sideline, he was going to miss wide, and he was going to put gas on that ball. He was absolutely not going to leave that ball inside.
Right. It almost felt like it was a formality in that I'm going to throw this pass with no intention of completing it because the way in which he did throw it, Moore couldn't even get to it. And there was a couple other times, too, Andrew, when I'm saying to myself, Jameis is certainly thinking about what took place in Denver. And I understand that because, it hurts you. You feel like you lost the game, and at the quarterback position, that's one of the few times you can actually say it, that when I throw a pick six and force it into a bad spot or make a bad decision, that is on me. It's one thing if the receiver runs the wrong route or if the protection is not there. But in this case, this was sheer, I'm throwing the football, it's off, it's behind the wide receiver in the worst place it could possibly be where the defensive back is trailing. That's an easy pick six. So, yes, it was clear to me that Jameis had the interceptions from Denver on his mind.
View from the sideline. Did the second Hopkins miss, the one on the opening drive of the third quarter after Jerome Ford gave him that huge boost with a 56-yard kickoff return to open the second half, did that second miss deflate the bench? It seemed like from where we were sitting, it kind of took the air out of the sails.
No, that's real. Football is a game of emotion, and as much as you try to keep your will upbeat and your desire to compete high, when you have setbacks like that, there is this little voice in the back of your mind or in the forefront that will say, "Oh, we don't have it. Why keep trying? Why go out there and keep fighting?" Those things become real and present, and you have to block them out. You have to tell them to be quiet and shut them up. And when you have a situation like that, when you have such a successful kickoff return to start a drive, and then the next thing you know, you cannot score, and on top of that, you missed the field goal. Yes, it hurts morale. That's a real deal. That's why we talk about momentum. Those things really take place in the course of a football game. So certainly, you couple that with the interceptions, you couple that with the missed field goals, and then throw this into the mix too. In that first half, Andrew, I really felt that the Steelers had no answer. They were so missing Pickens that
Yeah.
they just had no answer. They were one dimensional on offense and we couldn't capitalize on it. And that was part of the problem as well.
Yeah, I mean, give Shelby, give Dalvin gold stars in the middle of the line for the most part. In run support, I don't think we've given them enough credit all year. I know Nathan and I do our best to talk about him, you as well. I thought those guys were great. And yeah, without Pickens, they certainly were at a disadvantage. But give Scotty Miller from Bowling Green some credit because he made that beautiful toe tap catch on the sideline. It wasn't the same as the deep ball in Philadelphia where on 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1, Jalen took that shot and A.J. Brown made a great play, but it felt as demoralizing and deflating. And still yet they are in it kind of until the fourth quarter when they lose their cool. Two things happen. Kadarius Toney taunting. I don't know that I have ever seen taunting on a fair catch.
Right.
Like what are you doing? And then you muff the punt, which happens. But those are back-to-back punts. Kind of surprised he was out there for the second punt after the taunting on the previous one. But even go back to the first quarter. Jerod, he fielded a 60-yard punt on the 4-yard line. One thing you're always told, you don't field a punt on the 4-yard line.
Right. Well, that's the part where it's going to be up to the coaches and maybe teammates because I'm not sure what the level of accountability is and what the relationships are in the locker room. That you have these conversations with guys like, hey, man, your decision making is hurting the team. Your decision making is not the right thing to do right there in that situation. And moving forward, hey, if you make mistakes like that, we can't play you because we can't trust you to make the right decision. Now, in fairness to Tony, I understand he's new to the squad, but this is stuff that you learned back in your college days, and I'm pretty sure in Kansas City we're teaching the same premises as well. So that's really not a good excuse to give on his behalf. But ultimately, you can't do things that make it come across like you being a me guy. Because even feeling that one punt in which he muffed, you're going backwards, backwards, backwards. At that point, you are already out of position. The technique has been vacated because you can't square up to it and you're going to put yourself in a bad scenario. And that's exactly what happens. So the question becomes, are you trying to make a splash? Or are you trying to make a big play? Or are you doing what's best for the team right that moment? And that probably is faking like you have a fair catch and then blocking a gunner and making sure that he doesn't down the ball in that area.
Yeah.
That's what I would have coached him to do, and that's what I think he should have done. But obviously, he didn't do that.
A couple of other quick things here. The Ifedi one, my brother, who's always constantly texting during the game with his gripes. My brother made the point that when Ifedi got called for his personal foul, that came on a play in which Jameis was stood up in the backfield, and they didn't blow that dead at all. I mean, he was stood up immediately, and maybe, just maybe, if you blow the whistle when forward progress is clearly stopped, then it doesn't get heated like that. And you don't have people getting into it and throwing hands at the end. I think both can be true. They should have blown the whistle earlier, and Jermaine Ifedi can keep his cool while trying to defend the quarterback because that was just a deadly penalty, and then you end up punting because at that point you've missed the 2 field goals and you're not even going to try to get Dustin Hopkins out there for a 59, 60-yard kick, especially into the open end at that part of the stadium. 2 last things. Number 1, what did you think of the last pick? You had mentioned it was against quarters. They ran verticals over the head of Elijah Moore. Your thoughts as a former DB downfield level?
Well, from my vantage point, if they did run quarters, which is what I thought they did at the time of watching from the sideline, cover 4 is designed for 4 verts and 4 verticals, 4 versus 4 verticals, meaning that you have 4 guys running down the football field. So what do you have? You have 4 guys in a position over top of them to do what? Cover the 4 verts. So what you want to do in a situation where you have 4 verts is throw something underneath. Have someone read what's going on with the safeties and the cornerback or the nickel and just break the route down And again, just stop there and take what the defense is giving you, because there's likely maybe a linebacker carrying with you, but there's going to be some void in that area to where you can pick up some yardage. But if you keep running down the field vertically, guess what you're running right into? Coverage. So right there was a spot where you saw just that play itself out, to where we have to be better than that and make the right decision in that moment. And that's called being on the same page again. But maybe we don't have any checks if they're in cover four and the guys are just doing their job. Who knows? But quickly back to the Ifedi thing. He was damned if he do, damned if he don't, if the perception is he was defending the quarterback for getting hit.
Yeah.
Because that is, so to speak, his job, but you still got to do it in a manner and fashion in which you jaw at him, you don't punch at him, you know what I mean? And that has to be suffice for that moment, because, as we know, we cannot sustain any type of mistakes, and especially when you're going against a football team that doesn't make mistakes. So
especially
those are
the fourth
things,
quarter.
Yeah.
At that point of the field.
Yeah, exactly. So, Andrew, those are the things that really makes a microcosm for the season of how we've beaten ourselves more so than the opponent beating us. Because you can't tell me, I walked away from that game. It wasn't always the case. 6-7 years ago, I would tell you, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Cincinnati Bengals are much better than us from a talent standpoint. I don't feel that way anymore. It's now a situation where, where's our discipline at? Where's our resolve at? And what are we doing to make sure that we can beat these teams? Because again, what's so upsetting about yesterday's loss was we were capable of beating that team. You saw that in the first half, but obviously it's a 4-quarter game and you have to sustain it.
Yeah, and what Jameis said afterwards, and I'm paraphrasing, something along the lines of the Pittsburgh Steelers let the Cleveland Browns beat the Cleveland Browns.
Right, and that's the most frustrating
at the end,
part.
They did. Look, you make those kicks, you're 13-13. I feel it's a different game. I'm not putting it all on Dustin's shoulders. I'm not, because there are enough things that we've talked about in the last 15 minutes that all contribute to it, but you just kind of felt it slipping away there, and then eventually it did. All right, let's quickly turn our attention to week 15, Jerod, with that beautiful, is that like a 2-story Christmas tree behind you, or is it the way your camera's tilted? That thing looks like it goes from the floor to the like second level, third level ceiling there. How big is that thing?
It goes to the second level. Yeah. Okay. So it's a nice
that thing. That is a sizable tree. Well done, Cherry family. My thought though on next week, only one thing that matters, Jerod, are you going to, now that the Eras tour is over and Taylor Swift could be in the building, have some kind of Taylor Swift get up going on the sideline?
No, I will not go down that path. You know, I have much love for Travis Kelce, because I'm here to tell you, Andrew, every time we play against them, he shows Cleveland nothing but love. I can tell you a time we were in the locker room area and he didn't play in this preseason game, and someone was talking trash from KC about Cleveland as he was walking out. He literally stopped and said, "Hey, man, I'm from the town. We don't take that type of disrespect." And I was like, wow. So it's authentic and true, man. His love for Cleveland. I don't misread that by any stretch of the imagination. But no, I will not be getting involved in Taylor Swift and the Swifties and what they may bring to the table for this game.
As I said earlier, I'm a huge Travis and Jason fan, for that matter. I've done a couple of events with Travis over the years. I did some work with Jason at NFL Network. They are Cleveland through and through. They love their hometown. It's going to be great to have Travis back and represent Cleveland Heights. And how about Max Stevens? The Browns honored last week.
Yeah,
not their coach
right
when they were playing there, but Max Stevens, the 2024 Cleveland Browns High School Coach of the Year. Hopefully, maybe he's in the building as well, as the Kelceys come back home. The Chiefs, fresh off winning the AFC West title on Sunday night with a kick off the upright, off the Matthew upright. See what we did there? That somehow went in, and they come back. And you know what? Look, we saw it against the Ravens. We saw it against the Broncos. We've seen it a bunch of times today. The Browns are good enough with Jameis slinging it to beat any team on any given day. I think it's going to be fun. And I give Gibby until maybe Tuesday to take himself out of the me, Nathan, Gibby text chain that was nothing but Nathan Taylor Swift jokes on the flight home on Sunday, as he's trying to work as many Taylor Swift references into the broadcast. You have been warned this coming week. Jerod, happy holidays, you and your family. I'm glad we finally did this. Have a great week, man. I'll see you this weekend.
All right, take care, Andrew.
I also kind of feel like now, after seeing Jerod's Christmas tree game, that maybe, in future episodes of the Bark Tank, we have to get out of the home office and somehow move around. Maybe I'll do it like I do on my Instagram, and we'll do an entire Bark Tank episode, or that you see on the Browns Insiders on the Browns IG on Saturday and Sunday. Maybe I'll do it on the beach. Do a Bark Tank on the beach. Bark Tank meets Shark Tank. Bark Tank. No, I'm trying. I'm spitballing. Hey, send us your ideas, right? Comment or hit me up on the Twitter or the IG at Andrew Siciliano, or the TikTok, Andrew.Siciliano. Either way, Browns lose 3-10. They could still beat the Chiefs. Color me an optimist. I am, truly. We will see you at Huntington Bank Field coming up on Sunday. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and maybe some singer who no longer has a tour in town. We will see you there. Remember, share, like, subscribe to your new favorite podcast, The Bark Tank, presented by Sugardale. My name is Andrew Siciliano. So long, everybody.